What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tsla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down something very important that President Trump said that helped the market push a little bit, not to mention what's going to happen going into next week as the charts are showing some potential. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on invested cash. The offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with this market. Looking at SPY, as you guys could tell, for the last couple of weeks, we've been making higher highs and higher lows so far. Now, today we did see SPY dip a little bit, and this does show a shift in the trend where instead of continuing to break out higher, we're now kind of in a range. So as SPY dips towards this like 558 to 560 area, we like to get bought back up. This happened 1, 2, 3 times about. And then as we hit near 568 to 570, we tend to see a rejection. So those are going to be some very, very key things to remember heading into next week as we have this new range that is developing. So this level right here is going to be very important. I'm going to make this line yellow so it's easier to see. And then we also have another yellow line down here, which is going to be our support. Hopefully this is not too complicated. We could even just delete this line so it's easy to see. The two yellow lines here, this is our range. This is where SPY is kind of going back and forth right now. I want to see it break above 568 and hold above that to really start to see a push. Otherwise, we're still kind of stuck for the time being. Now, the market started off with the dip. This was no surprise. We did say that in my video from yesterday. I was expecting some kind of dip-like move back down towards 560 or so. We actually went a little bit lower than that. But then I was expecting some kind of push towards the end of the day, and that is what happened. We did get that push. Look at the green bar on SPY. We went from 558 all the way up to about 565 almost. So we got about a 7-point pump so far if you account for the after hours. And the reason for this is because we had two big things that happened. Number one, President Trump said that when it comes to his tariffs, there's going to be flexibility. So he's not announcing new tariffs right now. He's not saying he wants to increase tariffs 200%, 100% on this country. He's not really saying that right now. Instead, he keeps on hyping up April 2nd, which is when he's going to be announcing his reciprocal tariffs. And that's going to be very, very important because it's going to have a big effect on the US economy and other countries. So just keep that in mind. Now, when asked about how strict he's going to be, many reporters were asking, are there going to be exceptions? Are you going to be lenient? This and that. Trump is not going to be too lenient, but simultaneously, he's not going to be completely strict to the point where he's not willing to negotiate. He said this quite clearly that he's going to be flexible. There's going to be flexibility around these tariffs. He did not change his mind when he gave the top automakers a 1-month exemption, so just keep that in mind. And then once again, he's saying the same things about how we're getting ready for April 2nd. So until April 2nd, the market still has some leeway. The fact that he wants some flexibility did help the market to some extent, especially with the EU announcing they're going to be delaying the reciprocal tariffs. So some good news came out. And then the second reason why the market pushes because of the options chain. So look at the way the market makers close things. What they first is they chop the market really hard for like the first couple of hours. That really hurts these premiums. And then at the end of the day, they push the market a little bit higher, which hurts a lot of the shorts. So notice that almost every single of the calls ended up out of the money. The large majority of calls ended up failing, going to zero. That helped the market makers. Then when it comes to the puts, okay, about 1 million ended up in the money, but almost 3 million were out of the money. So the majority of them ended up out of the money, and the market makers took a big win on this one. So they took that premium, they won the other way around, and this was a very, very interesting trend that happened. They did cause a lot of pain for the stock market. So that's the reason why we got this pump. President Trump and the options chain with quadruple witching caused this nice move to the upside. So what's happening going into next week? Let's be really quick about this. For next week, on Monday, we have PMI data that's coming out. For Tuesday, we have very, very minor manufacturing numbers. For Wednesday, we have Kashkari and a couple of Fed speakers, but it's quite minor. Thursday, we have a couple of GDP numbers, but it's not that serious. The GDP growth rate is going to be very important, so I do think this could cause some volatility. But then besides that, what I meant to say is there's not anything else that's too crazy. It's not as serious for Thursday. And then Friday is going to be a big day since we have PCE inflationary numbers and the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report, which may cause more volatility. With that being said, the market's going to start off on a slow end for Monday and Tuesday, but then data gets more serious as we get to Thursday and Friday. So keep that in mind. For earnings, this is what the earnings calendar looks like. Lots of retail. If you look at what's happening, we just have very, very minor earnings. We have GameStop. McCormick, and a few more like that. Dollar Tree, more retail like Chewy, and the list goes on. Last but not least, the market's still at extreme fear. If you look at the put to call option ratio, the VIX is still technically on a bit of a downtrend, which tends to be bullish for the markets. And there's still a lot of fear that's present, but we're not as extremely fearful as we were, many weeks ago. 1 week ago, the fear and greed index was at 20. Now we're at 23, so it's getting closer to just being at fear. So what do I see for the market from this point on? We're watching to see, okay, could this be a head and shoulders here? I mean, I know it's not what a lot of people want to hear, but I'm watching to see this as a possibility. But that would imply we go a little bit higher for 568. Then we'll see if you reject or not off of that. It could also be a trap because we have not been able to lose 558 yet to turn bearish. We're actually holding support, and technically we're still trying to make a higher low compared to that 549 low about a week and a half ago. So what I suspect is next week we do expect to push for 568. We'll see if we break through this or not, depending on announcements, what happens with the Russia-Ukraine news and all these other things like that. If we break 568, we could be going for the 575 area all over again. But if we reject off 568, then we're looking for that head and shoulder setup. Well, actually, it's not a guarantee since we're technically range bound. If we reject and lose 558, then yes, I do think the head and shoulders pans out. But it depends on what the reaction is up here. I do think we push a little bit higher by another 4 or 5 points to about 568 plus. And we'll see what the reaction is if we break through this or not. But look for a little bit more upside, at least on SPY. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. We're actually trying to make higher lows, which is a good sign. However, when it comes to this, as we're making the higher lows, I want to see this break past 483. If we break that, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to about 492. If we end up losing 472, we could turn back down towards 467. So we're watching this very, very closely, at least for the time being. Now, there's a left shoulder here, a double bottom-like structure. We're trying to make like a kind of like a right shoulder, but the main thing is that we're not technically respecting this trend line as much as we were before. I would argue that it's more like we're just range bound. So as we hit 474-ish, we tend to bounce. So I'm going to make this yellow. And then as we hit resistance near 485 or so, we tend to reject. So we actually had, for example, we had about 1, 2, 3 rejections off 485. So I'm thinking that going into next week, we do try to push for that 485 target, and we'll see if we reject or not. We're technically just range bound on the triple Q. We're trying to make a higher low compared to this low, so that it does favor upside a little bit more, but we'll see just to be safe. For the Russell 2000, I need to see us hold above 205. We still have an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. If we break and hold 205, we're looking for an attempt for 208 and eventually the 210s. If we lose support at 200, we're looking for a dip back down, so we'll see how it goes. So watch that very, very closely. For ES, same setup. We have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. I want to see us get back above 57.50 to really start pushing. If we lose the low right here around 56.50, we could turn back down. But overall, I think we're doing a fantastic job in my opinion. So we'll see how it does here. I mean, there is that possibility of the head and shoulders, but I'm not as confident about that. This is actually doing a good job at basing here. So look out to see if this is like a head and shoulders or not. Will we go back up to this high and retest the trend line and then reject? If that happens, that's the bearish case. But if we break this high here, 57.50, we could remain bullish temporarily for another week or so before we see Trump's reciprocal tariffs. So it's still possible we try to pump it. It depends on the test. I do think we push a little higher for about 57.50 first. And we'll see what the reaction is. NQ, same thing. We're trying to reclaim this trend line. We're technically a bit more bullish, double bottom, trying to bounce. We formed a nice base at 19,600. I want to see us break and hold above 20,000 to remain a little bit more bullish. I do think as we push closer to about 20,100 first, and we'll see what the reaction is. Bitcoin looks a bit more bullish. It's a little bit more bullish. It's not that strong. It's also in a range. We like to kind of like bounce off 80,000 or the low 80,000s. And we like to reject around 85,000. So if we push a little bit higher here, we're looking for about that 84 area. That's looking quite decent. We also happen to have Nvda, which has like an inverse head and shoulders. If we try to hold above 120, we're looking for an attempt for 125. If we end up losing 114, we're looking for a dip back down towards that 109 area. So we'll have to see how it goes. Tesla looks a bit more bullish. If you look at our wedge right over here, we're actually looking at this pattern. I would like to see us hold above this resistance. As long as we're above this wedge, we're looking decent. Let's see if we can hold above 250. This is going to be very close to our 50 EMA. If that's the case, we have a gap fill above at about 262. If we reject off 250, we're looking for a move back down to about 242. So we got to try to hold above that. It does look a little bit more bullish, but we need confirmation first. Tesla's showing some life right now, so it is due for that. That's a good piece of news. Apple has a nice double bottom like structure. I need to see us break 220. If that holds, we're looking for 226. Let me just go over a few more to make this video nice, short, sweet, and simple for the weekend. We're in a range right here. We like to bounce off this 175 area. So we're looking at resistance. We're in a range on coin, right? 175, we bounce. 200, we tend to reject. I think we push close to 198 to 200. We'll see what the reaction is. For Amazon, we have this resistance near 198 to 200. If we end up losing 191, we could turn back down. So we're still technically in a range, but look for 198 as a potential target. For Meta, if we could hold above 593, we're looking for an attempt for 608. If we end up losing this 586 area, we could be dipping. So we're watching to see if we could hold support off this bullish divergence. For Microsoft, we're in a range right here. If we end up losing this 380 area, we're looking kind of weak. If we could break past 392, we're looking for an attempt to push even more towards that 395 area. So watch that as well. For Google, we're looking for an attempt for about 168. If that breaks, we're looking even more bullish. If we end up losing 164, we're looking for a dip. So we'll just have to see how that goes. Anyways, that is it for my video, guys. I thank you all so much for listening. One good sign for the markets, at least for bulls, is that the 200 EMA is failing for the VIX, so this is looking a little bit more bearish. That typically signifies there could be more upside coming. Also, the fact that every time SPY is dipping, we're getting bought back up. So like right here, we dipped, got bought back up. There's another example. Like right here, we dipped, got bought back up. We dipped here, and now we're getting bought back up again. So I do see a little bit more upside early next week. And we'll see what the reaction is. Obviously, a lot could change during a week depending on what happens with geopolitics, what happens with all our economic data. For now, the market is looking decent. So we'll see how things go with this data reaction. But for now, the charts do look like they want to go a little bit higher. And buyers are still defending, so we're not officially quite bearish yet. I'll give you guys another update soon. So I thank you for listening. Please enjoy your weekend. It was a crazy week, and just relax and unwind. And I'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening, guys. I appreciate it, and peace out.